Hey, y'all. Welcome to Pondering the Pages with Pierce and Kyle.
I'm Pierce.
I'm Kyle.
Welcome back, everybody.
Welcome back. You got a funny for us today?
I think so.
Hmm.
You know, every time I think about the past, it just brings back so many memories.
That's a dad joke.
That was a Stephen Wright joke.
Stephen Wright. Who's Stephen Wright?
So, you've heard of Mitch Hedberg? I think I've talked about him before, but he's like a one-liner comedian. That's what he does. He just has one-liners. But Stephen Wright was before him. He, like in the 80s. And then he's still a comedian now, I think, if he's not dead. But just one-liners, just really funny.
So earlier, before we started recording, we were talking about the show Suits.
Yeah.
And how you had watched that. And I just ironically had watched some of it yesterday for the first time as well. I thought about you in season 1 because your passion for racing when they were basically making the purchase of McKernan motors, I believe.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It was just like, Pierce would like this.
Yeah, I've seen it. It's really good. It's such a good show. I finished it last night, so it's fresh on my mind, the ending of it. Somebody broke into my apartment last night and stole everything and replaced it all with an exact replica.
There was a part in that Suits that I don't know why I got tickled at this, just because I think when you hang around particular people, you start trying to be like them just a little bit. And it's when the guy that is over the hedge fund meets Dominic from McKernan Motors right there in that scene. And Mike has done something a little bit different with his hair.
Yeah.
And he's standing on stage and Harvey looks back. He says, "Are you trying to look like me?"
Yeah.
And he puts his hands to his hair.
Yeah.
I thought that was comical. I love that stuff.
I think around season 3 or 4, whenever Mike starts kind of coming into his own, they at the start of the new season, they change his haircut to try to make him, and it's the all slicked back, but it's like not short enough on the sides, and so it kind of comes out. You know what I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. It just doesn't look. It doesn't last long. Thankfully, they figure it out, but man, it just doesn't look good.
I thought about so many things last night and watching those first couple of videos when, obviously if you're in a professional setting, a lot of times people want you to dress for success. And it's just like Harvey kept telling him, shave, 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 shave. I remember when I first started practice, I'd read Dress for Success, and then Dr. Botman had given me several books on that topic because he was really into that. And it's just like, I remember wearing a tie for the first probably 2 or 3 years of practice. And it was just like, there was such freedom in not wearing a tie anymore that you just kind of grab a shirt without, but at the same time, if you've got everything laid out in the morning, it's not really an issue.
Did you use a tie clip to hold it in place? I feel like that'd get in the way doing what you do.
Yeah, a lot of people believe that wearing a tie in chiropractic, it would basically, the tie would be kind of where your center of gravity is, as it was kind of free floating. Mm-hmm. So it's just like you would know you were too far forward or too far back in your adjustment and your line of drive.
I feel like it could get caught in that table and
that'd be bad.
Suck you in.
That'd be bad.
I bought some powdered water yesterday, but I don't know what to add. That's a Stephen Wright.
Oh man, powdered water.
When I was 7, my grandma told me to come over here, and I said, "Why?" And she said, "Just come over here." And she handed me $10 and said, "Don't tell your mother I'm giving you this." And I said, "It's going to cost you more than that." Those are the 2 that I'd saved. Oh man, they're so funny. But yeah, Stephen Wright. If you look up Stephen Wright videos, little compilations, or
I don't know why when you first said Stephen Wright, what popped into my head was N.T. Wright. And, I've read and studied some of his stuff before. Agree with some of it, or agree with a lot of it. Don't agree with all of it. But he's a pretty, obviously well-studied theologian. Controversial on some topics, but at the same time, it's just like, I like him.
I haven't read a whole lot of his stuff. I've heard him quoted a lot. I think John Piper's quoted him a few times and different authors. So I think he's kind of well respected in the space. So. But
I don't know what denomination he's a part of. I almost wonder if it's Anglican, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know.
He always wears a big cross.
I don't know if I've ever seen him. I don't know what he looks like.
Bald-headed, glasses, got hair on the sides.
Mm-mm.
Very well-spoken English accent.
Is he from England?
I would assume.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I wonder if he may be Anglican. I'm not sure.
Hey, y'all. Welcome to Pondering the Pages with Pierce and Kyle.
So the topic today
Mm-hmm.
was 5 songs
Artists or albums.
Or
and
albums.
Or albums.
that have edified my walk
Yes.
with Christ.
Yeah.
I got to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
It took a little thinking.
Is this a difficult one for you?
It is, because most of the songs that edify me do not edify me in my walk with Christ. And
No, what's the opposite of edify?
let's say demoral? I don't know. I'm not really sure.
De-edify? That's not a word.
And edify? I'm not sure.
Let's find out.
I would think edify would mean to lift up,
To build up. Edifice. Building.
to tear down, I guess.
Antonyms. To learn? That's not right.
I would think it would be to tear down.
Yeah, there's got to be a word. But synonyms are enlighten, uplift, educate, teach.
And the antonyms is learn. That's weird.
Yeah, well, I guess that makes sense. I mean, from a different perspective, if I'm teaching you, the opposite would be you teaching me.
Is that the only antonym for it?
On dictionary.com's app, it is. Mislead, confuse, misinform, baffle. Those are the antonyms, according to wordhippo.com.
So I started thinking through my walk
Mm-hmm.
as I'm thinking about these 5 particular songs. And I think that they kind of caught me at particular times in my life.
Did you do songs or albums or artists or mix?
I did really songs and artists.
Yeah.
As far as albums, I didn't have an album.
I just had one. That's,
Yeah, is it Shai Linne's?
it's not. He's one of the artists, but it's his. He's got more than one album that have.
So you go with number. Are you going in order 1 through 5 or just?
Not really. No, not
Okay.
really in any particular order. So my number 1 would be Sovereign Grace Music. They basically they have taken some old hymns and done covers and remakes of them, but they also really try to write kind of modern hymns, new hymns. But it's kind of contemporary worship. I don't even want to use that description because it's not contemporary. Kind of makes me think of I don't know how to say it. Kind of like how would you describe? I was trying to think of this the other day. How would you describe contemporary Christian music as far as a genre? Because contemporary Christian doesn't describe the way it sounds, like rock or rap or jazz or whatever. So how would you describe contemporary Christian in a genre? Soft rock was the best thing that I could come up with, kind of soft rock and or pop.
Yeah, I'd say probably soft rock would probably be the best. And then I would say there are some artists today as far as contemporary Christian artists. Let's just say Lauren Daigle.
Mm-hmm.
Lauren Daigle, I think her words to her songs have a lot of meaning for, I would say, more young women today that have maybe gone through struggles of identity and things like that. So I think that she kind of resonates to that group.
Yeah.
But I would say that would be almost like soft rock or whatever. April listens to not a contemporary Christian artist a lot. Oh, man, I'm going blank on her. Sarah McLachlan.
The one from the dog commercials?
Probably.
I Will Remember You.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So April really likes Sarah McLachlan.
Have you seen those commercials? It's the one where
The ASPCA.
yeah, it's got
So sad.
it's got-
Dog with like an eye missing and
Yeah.
chained up and shivering in the cold.
Yeah.
It's like, man, it makes you want to
Yeah.
adopt a dog.
Yeah. That's fun. That's
Yeah.
the only song of hers that I know is.
Yeah, so Sarah McLachlan, April listens to a lot of Sarah McLachlan radio in the bathroom.
Yeah.
I like Sarah McLachlan. It's just like
Pretty voice.
beautiful. Her words are good too. It's just
Mhm.
like, but it's all around. I mean, self for the most part. And it's just
Mhm.
like, so I think that when you say contemporary Christian, I think that contemporary Christian music for the most part seems to focus on what the individual is going through.
Yeah, you're right.
And I think that that's okay. I think that that's okay. But I think that when you start to truly understand the sovereignty of God,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that we all come to different little bits and pieces of that. And you remember scripture such as all things work together for good for those who love God. What you went through is not perceived as bad once you get the sovereignty of God in your mind a little bit, because you start to trust that this horrible situation was really part of my molding.
Yeah.
And I like that. I
Mhm.
like understanding that.
Yeah.
I like understanding that previous relationships of people that have gone on were part of my molding, things like that.
Right.
So, but
Yeah, I think Brent will like this. I think Eric Church has a song about that. Well, he's got one.
Man Made a Bar.
No, wait. He's got one that I learned that from my 3-year-old or something like that. It's like lessons that his 3-year-old kid taught him just from raising him.
Brent kind of looks like Eric Church.
He does. I was just thinking that he looks just like him, but he.
If they both have glasses on, he could be his doppelganger.
There's what's that song?
I think Eric Church is taller than Brent, though.
A little bit. Those I've loved along the way, where I don't remember the word. It's been a long time since I've listened to it, but he kind of talks about the people in his life who are no longer a part of his life, who he's loved along the way, and how they've kind of impacted it. It's a good song. But yeah, so my number one would be Sovereign Grace Music. They're kind of a
As artist, correct?
artist. Yes. Did I say song?
No.
Just really, really biblical and mostly Christ-centered worship music. Like it really does. Whenever I think of worship, I try to think of Isaiah 6. If you were in Isaiah's position in Isaiah 6, and you appear before God in front of his throne, seeing this scene, and you fall down before his face, could I say the lyrics of this song in that situation? That's kind of a standard that I use, or a formula that I use for worship music.
Man, I wouldn't be able to say anything. I'd just say holy.
Right. But if you got past that, if you know that moment where he's just, woe is me, I'm a sinful man, I'm a man of unclean lips. But if you're able to get past that, could you sit in the presence of God in front of his throne? Could you say the lyrics of this song and it be appropriate? Of course, that's not the only standard, but that's a good guideline to see if
Yeah, it's kind of interesting when you put yourself in that position. It's just like, obviously I don't know what my response is going to be, but I can kind of surmise that it'll either be face down the ground, not wanting to make eye contact with him because of how sinful I am and how holy he is. So it's just like, I just face down the ground, not looking at anything, maybe eyes closed, maybe not, and just really nervous.
Yeah.
And just like not looking up or making a twitch of muscle. I don't think it's going to be like sometimes in my prayer time now, if I get in that position, I'm going to sleep.
Yeah.
But I think my adrenaline will be so high in that moment, but at the same time, it may not have worked that way at that moment in time, but I won't fall asleep.
Yeah.
And I won't make a move until he says, get up.
Who was it that it says that he fell down as if he were dead?
Stephen?
It's somebody that appears before God, or maybe, I can't remember, but it says that he basically just fell over as if he was dead. It wasn't like he got down on all fours or on his knees.
He just passed out.
Yeah, it's like he just, boom.
It's kind of the picture of fainting.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that you see people that it's just like they see things that are so horrendous or things that are so exciting to them, and it's just like their body can't contain it. They just bonk.
That's kind of crazy to think about.
I don't remember. I don't think I've ever fainted. I almost passed out one time when I smashed my thumb on the roof. Almost fell off the roof.
Yeah.
Dude, there's something if you smash your thumb, it's just like
I hit my knee one time. I think I was using a pipe wrench and it like slipped off of the union or whatever I was tightening, and it just smacked my knee in just the right spot. And I got dizzy. I mean, it's insane how that works. Just if you feel an amount of pain, a certain amount of pain.
I had to lay down the roof or I was going to fall off. I was literally going to tumble off. I was like, oh, that was tumbling.
That's wild. But yeah, Sovereign Grace, they just really, really biblical. Sometimes if I'm trying to pray or if I'm just trying to worship, mostly when I'm trying to pray, it's kind of hard to think of something to say sometimes. And Sovereign Grace music does a really good job at
saying it for you. They've come up with creative and articulate and biblical ways to express all the different types of worship, gratitude, repentance, just worship for who God is, and put it in words that are really helpful. And you know how when you hear a song sometimes, or you hear a quote, and it's like, man, that's what I've been trying to say. Absolutely.
And just couldn't think of the words to use, but that's exactly how I would word it.
So not in any particular order, like we said, we're just kind of going through these, but this is kind of my timeline. I would say Beulah Land.
Oh, that's a good one.
Was an edifying song once I started to understand it a little bit more. I'd heard it at funerals of some of the pillars of faith in my own life. Like my mom's mom was probably the most influential from a faith standpoint in my life.
Mm-hmm.
She was just kind of a center point. She was kind of a foundational stone for me. My mom had a, kind of a mixed life of in and out of serving God, and she had a stroke in the 80s, so I had to go live with my grandma for a couple years when she was. So there was no option of going to church. It was you were going to church.
Yeah.
So I think that Beulah Land, being played at some of those people that were the pillars of faith in your life and your upbringing, when you hear that song played at their funeral, you're crying because you're sad that person is gone.
Mm-hmm.
But you're not really understanding. You're hearing the music, but you're not understanding the words yet.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that when I came to a point where I was trying to understand, I think that my faith is going to end inside. And then taking Hebrews 11, that faith is believing without seeing. It's like when you actually get to see God for the first time at the resurrection, faith is no longer required.
Right.
You know what I mean? So faith is
believing in things that you have not seen.
Faith is your ticket that he's given you free of charge during this life. But when you're inside of the halls of, I can't help but think the halls of his castle or his house, and you see him, it's just like faith is no longer a requirement. It's like you're seeing it. So I think Beulah Land kind of hit me. I like Carroll Roberson's version of it best. Jamie Johnson does it with Alison Krauss.
Really?
And,
I didn't know that.
Alison Krauss and one other female artist, and they do a good job. It's just totally different twist on it. But
so that line, faithful. What song is that from? Faithful end in sight.
Beulah Land.
Is that from Beulah Land?
Yeah. I'm looking now across the river.
Official end in
where
sight.
I want to in sight. Okay, so in sight. So not inside.
For the longest time, I didn't know if it was inside or in sight.
So both.
And it's not. But I feel like we've talked about this before. I never knew for a long time. But then before I looked it up, I just now looked it up and figured out which one it is. But I thought sight made more sense because faith is believing in things that you have not
It
seen.
does make more sense. I just like to change words to fit me.
Yeah,
and when I'm inside, I'll see them.
When at my church in Guatemala, they would take worship songs that were like, well-known worship songs,
Mm-hmm.
but they would change the lyrics of them slightly because they wanted to make them more biblically correct or just deeper, I guess.
Yeah.
So they would take well-known worship songs and slightly change the lyrics.
Amazing Faith instead of Amazing Grace type deal.
No, they didn't change that. I can't think of any examples right now, but I liked it because it made the lyrics better. Like they really did. They took some of the lyrics and sometimes like they would change entire lines and it would make it a deeper song and just more biblically correct. But the downside of it was these were all songs in Spanish that I wasn't familiar with until I got there. So I was trying to learn these lyrics. So I'd go find the songs to listen to them and try to learn the lyrics so that I could sing them on Sunday. And they're different. And so
Oh, I got this wrong. I got the wrong lyrics.
But I always thought that was interesting. Cool how they did that. So my second one is another artist. Again, no particular order. Wolves at the Gate. They're categorized as a Christian metalcore band.
I was thinking they were. I was just like,
but metalcore. I don't know all the different types of metal. There's probably 20 different types of metal, and I'm ignorant on the topic. But I would just call them metal, just a metal band. But they've got some really really interesting songs. There's one called "The Father's Bargain," where basically is a conversation between Jesus and God the Father, where it's biblically inaccurate, but it's an interesting song. But basically, God the Father is saying, there's this sinful people who deserve my wrath. What are we going to do? And Jesus says, how does he phrase it? I can't remember how he phrases it exactly, but basically says, I know a way that they can live. Bring in all their sins, and lay it all on me is kind of the bridge that leads into the climax.
Where was the edification point in, like, say, that song for you?
Kind of the same with one. I don't want to give away my honorable mention, but Philippians 4:8. Basically, think of biblical things, think of things that are worthy of worship, that are wonderful, that are honorable. I can't remember all the different adjectives, but it caused me to think. Like that song, that's a really good song, "The Father's Bargain." It caused me to. It made me think of this moment where, well, one, it makes me think of Jesus willingly taking on our sins and just accepting on himself the full wrath of God for our sins, which is Shai has a line where I think it was Shai, maybe Stephen the Levite or Timothy Brindle, who says, I'm going to paraphrase it, he accomplished in 3 hours more than any sinner would in hell. So he in 3 hours, Christ accomplished more than he paid off fully the debt that we owed, and we could have spent an eternity in hell and never paid it off, and he did it in 3 hours.
As you were talking in the Philippians verse, it kind of made me think of not necessarily the antithesis of edify, but I think that what we were asking is the 5 artists, albums, or songs that edified you toward God or built you up toward God. I would say most of the songs that I've listened to most of my life would be songs that I love, but they edify me toward the world.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and that's for a long time I listened to the same stuff that led me towards the world.
Sure.
And there was a period of time where I even quit listening to rap altogether, just because I hadn't found any biblical Christian rap. I hadn't found any Christian rap, period. All I knew was Big Crit and Kid Cudi, and those are not.
That shows his age, doesn't it? 90s rap is still the greatest generation of rap. I'm sorry, and he just went somewhere else with it.
As much as I loved their music and their songs, it is so bad. The lyrics are horrible for you, and so I quit listening to rap altogether because I couldn't, and it was so hard because rap is my favorite type of music, and I quit listening. But luckily now,
found Shai-Linne.
Thankfully, yeah. In fact, Ted Lotus was the one who recommended Shai-Linne because Ted Lotus grew up in Philly, and Shai-Linne is from Philly, and Ted, if I remember correctly, the first time he heard Shai-Linne was on a mixtape.
That's cool.
Somebody gave him. So he recommended him to me, and but yeah, so where was I going with that? Anyway, I don't remember where I was headed with that, but Wolves at the Gate was my second one. But Embracing Accusation is another song that Shane and Shane originally wrote, but they did a cover of it that's really, really good.
Wolves at the Gate.
Yeah. And basically it's there's a video on YouTube of one of the Shanes describing his thought process in writing the lyrics. But it's basically the devil is singing the song to him of you're a sinner and you're condemned. And then he goes through the chorus and a couple of verses, and then he gets to the bridge where he says, but he's forgotten the refrain that Jesus saves. And so he's singing. Mm-hmm. There's a line where he says, singing the first verse so conveniently over me, but he leaves out that second verse of basically we're all condemned, we're all sinners. But the second verse, Christ saves. And so Satan just sings that first verse, but leaves out the second one. But there's a lot of variety in the genres of the stuff that I've picked. That's kind of on purpose because different genres come in at different times, and I seem to cycle through them. Like for a long time, I just listened to Wolves at the Gate and a couple other artists in that kind of metal, where that was like all I listened to for a few months, and then get back around to rap and then Sovereign Grace and other worship, and kind of just cycle through these different genres.
Well, stuff is always interesting to me how we run in these cyclical patterns, and we'll kind of go back to so my second song I would say is I Am Redeemed by Big Daddy Weave. I think it just kind of hit me at a time where I was truly starting to understand redemption just based on reading the scripture. But then it's just like a song hits at the same time you're learning something. And it's just like, man, I've got all this stuff, all these stories and history of just depravity, for a lack of a better term. And that stuff's been forgiven based on me saying I'm sorry. You know, based on me saying I'm sorry, obviously through what Christ did in redeeming mankind. But it also requires repentance. And I think that I Am Redeemed by Big Daddy Weave kind of drew me to repentance for some reason. I would say that's probably, I mean, you're probably talking like probably 12 years ago.
Yeah.
Even though I was a believer, when I started to understand some of these things that I'd heard in church or I'd listened to a particular song or whatever, but when you start reading the Bible for yourself, you start to understand what Jesus truly accomplished on the cross and what God the Father accomplished through raising him from the dead. And I Am Redeemed, it kind of hit me at that time. And I think Big Daddy Weave, especially if you watch the video of that, Big Daddy Weave isn't big.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a really big, and I'm going to say it just the way it is. He's a really big fat guy.
Yeah.
And sometimes we look at people and we judge them. I'm thinking, man, that guy suffers from gluttony, or, you know, he needs to lay off the Twinkies or whatever. But at the same time, I think that goes back to, you know, don't mess with that little piece of sawdust that's in his eye, which may be his fatness. when I've got a log hanging out of mine, which may be struggling with pornography or struggling with alcoholism or struggling with wanting to smoke weed all the time. So I think that I Am Redeemed kind of hit me at that time where I was starting to focus on more my own sin instead of other people's.
That's good.
And I think that that's why it hit me at that time.
Huh. Yeah, that's a good song. I remember singing that at River Valley. We would sing that pretty frequently. So my third choice it's an album. I think the correct way to pronounce this is Isla Vista Worship 2, but I've always said Isla Vista. Isla Vista Worship 2 is what the album is called. The artist is Isla Vista.
So this is the album.
Yeah, the artist is Isla Vista Worship, but the album is just called Isla Vista Worship 2. But this was an album that it came out. So kind of a funny story of how I found him. My dad, whenever I was in Guatemala, my dad sent me a Facebook message or something saying, hey, listen to this song that your cousin Eli is on. He wrote this song or whatever, and he sent me one of these guys' songs. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so good. I knew Eli wrote music, but I didn't know this was I didn't know he was this good or that it sounded amazing. So I hadn't talked to my cousin Eli in years. So I sent Eli a Facebook message, or maybe it was on Instagram. I was just like going on about this song. I was like, man, this song is so good.
So proud of you.
Yeah. Like this is incredible. And I never heard back from him. But he wasn't on the song. It wasn't his song. It was Isla Vista Worship's song. And but I think the reason my dad thought that my cousin was on it was because I think Eli posted the song on Facebook. Like he just shared the song on Facebook because at the time, him and his brother, my other cousin Sammy, were living at a place called the Jesus Burgers House in Southern California. And this worship band is also from or also went to the Jesus Burgers House. So basically it's almost like a frat house in Southern California, but every Saturday they would just do a big cookout and make a bunch of burgers and hot dogs, and all the homeless people would come and hang out. Yeah, Jesus Burgers House. So that was the connection there. But then I started listening to the other songs on that album. That album had just been released, and so that album it made me think of how you can listen. It's like smells. You can listen to a song or smell a certain smell, and it just immediately takes you back to a certain time in life or a certain place. And this album does that for me, specifically Monterrico in Guatemala, but I listen to it everywhere. But it's crazy how it's exactly the album that I needed in that time. It's kind of, for lack of a better way to describe it, it's like, imagine if some kind of surfer boys from Southern California wrote a worship album. This is kind of what this is what you'd get. But I've talked about this song before. There's one song on the album called Thank You, where it says, Father, I just wanted to thank you because all of my life I've been running, but the look in your eye tells me I'm safe here, so I'm not going anywhere. I don't want to go anywhere. I'll stay here with you. And that song, I remember I was driving to one of the villages and that song was playing, and it was kind of a normal day. I mean, there was nothing really difficult that had been going on. It was kind of a tough season, but nothing huge. But I was listening to it, and I broke down and just started like weeping in the car. And I went back. It was crazy. I went back and forth from weeping and like laughing hysterically.
I remember you telling me this.
Yeah.
Like, this guy's a psycho. Hoping nobody sees you.
And the weeping was kind of what you were talking about with Redeemed, where it's you kind of start to comprehend a little bit deeper what God has done for you and how huge that is. And then the laughing hysterically was this. It was just a huge release of
joy.
Stress. And yeah, it was just joy. And so then I'd laugh because of the joy, and then the truth of the song would hit me again, and I'd start crying again, and then it's like more release. And so I'm just, but anyway, so that album, anytime I listen to that album, it takes me straight back to Guatemala and that time specifically.
Especially Monterrico.
Yeah, and it takes me back to that place, but it also takes me back to where I was it's like a memory with God, if that makes sense. When you think about a memory that you have with someone, you think about that time, you think about who you were as a person, who they were as a person, and the friendship or whatever. And so it kind of takes me back to that place in my walk with Christ. But yeah, that's such a good song. Huge nostalgic value for me on that one.
Third on my list, but obviously in not any particular order, would be Amazing Grace. I do not like the My Chains Are Gone version. I like the original version. I like Amazing Grace especially more after I studied the lyrics, why it was written, who it was written by. So a guy was a slave trader, and in the bottom of the boat is where they kept the slaves when they were bringing them from Africa to the States or to England or wherever they were taking them. And Amazing Grace was a black spiritual, and it was written on the black keys of the piano. All of the notes were originally written on only the black keys.
I didn't know that.
So a lot of the really spiritual songs that we had in the Americas from an early time, or even maybe in England, were originally black spirituals. And I just like the fact that you think about a person that has been ripped from their country through force and put in the bottom of a boat, and they're writing spirituals such as Amazing Grace. It gives you a little bit more gravity and appreciation for me, and this is just me, probably one of my favorite figures from history would be Martin Luther King Jr. He wasn't a perfect person, but nobody is except Jesus. You know what I mean? So it's just like people can say, "Oh yeah, well, he wasn't that great a person. He cheated on his wife." It's just like, well, that's fine, but he still accomplished some great things, and it's just like he was masterful at words. I mean, he definitely had a gift. His "I am a dream" speech, or his "I am a dream" speech is,
I have a dream.
I have a dream. Yeah, it's not I am a dream. I have a dream. It's just like impacted me. And I think about Amazing Grace, how much grace that a person that's going through that must give to the person that's putting them through that, because unless you forgive, you will not be forgiven. And I think that Amazing Grace always kind of resonates that for me. So it's always going to be a worshipful song for me, because it reminds me of how much I've been given grace and how much more I need to give it to everybody, especially those people that are hurting you, but especially the people that are closest to you and your family, because those are the people that you most often don't give grace to. You give it to them later, but in the moment you're usually mean, or you say something that's stupid. So Amazing Grace would be one of those for me.
So number 4, again in no particular order, is Shai Linne, the artist of Shai Linne. But I think I'm gonna break the rules again, just like I do on every one of our top 5 lists, and do Shai Linne / Bryann T. Or Bryann Trejo. I was thinking about this yesterday. Shai Linne is like Paul. It's all doctrine, and he's got some kind of worship focused music, but mostly it's doctrine and teaching. It's like Paul's letters are correcting and teaching and giving facts. But Shai Linne there are, in fact, a lot of the topics of doctrine, and the different doctrines, just the jargon, the different words and names of these doctrines. I heard them for the first time in Shai Linne's music. It wasn't reading doctrinal books, or it wasn't studying scripture. The first time I heard a ton of the topics that I now like to study were from Shai Linne's music. So it was kind of interesting. That's why a lot of times when we talk about scripture, I'll say Shai Linne has a song about that, because that's the first time I heard of that topic and learned about it was through his music.
I like that.
And so he's had he's edified me so much on doctrine and topics and studying scripture. And what I like about his music is a lot of times he will give you the scriptures that he's talking about. So there's a song where he's talking about spiritual warfare, and he says,
Ephesians.
No, I wrote this in the spirit of Jude 3 and 2 Peter 2. I can't remember what exactly he was talking about in that moment, but those two scriptures from the lyrics have stuck in my head, so I know if I'm going to, or maybe it was defending the faith. I think it was against false teaching, but he says, the line is, I wrote this in the spirit of Jude 3 and 2 Peter 2, contend for the faith. And so I know, because of him putting these lyrics in his music, the scriptures in the lyrics, if I'm going to look at scriptures about defending the faith, I can go to Jude 3 and 2 Peter 2. It at least gives me a place to start. But then Bryann T is somebody that I've heard about more recently, and he's more like John. So if Shai is Paul, Bryann T is John, where he's much more like I think his record label is called Kingdom Music or Kingdom KMF, Kingdom Music Family, something like that. He's all about the kingdom. That's what he talks about, and 90% of his music is...
That's what Jesus talked about a lot,
right,
too.
is the kingdom. And so he's... It's a lot more of be sanctified, like submit to the sanctification process, listen to the Holy Spirit, really be a doer of the word and not a hearer of the word. Like it's much more of the... not so much the doctrinal type, but
the application.
The application. That's a good way to say it. And but he's got some really good songs. One of my favorites of his right now is called "Do You," where it says the opening or the chorus is, "You don't pray the way you're supposed to pray, do you? You don't say what you're supposed to say, do you? You don't live the way you're supposed to live. You don't forgive the way God forgives. You don't really know who Jesus is, do you?" And it was it's kind of a challenge to somebody listening. It's like, man, do I
know who Jesus is?
Yeah, and that was something I asked last week was, have you really come to know Jesus, or do you just know about him? And it was kind of a convicting and challenging moment for me whenever I heard that song the first time, because it's super catchy and you sing along. But then you're like, oh man, dude, you kind of turn the mirror on yourself and just forces you to. And there's like another line in there where he says, "You got good at hiding things that make you look bad." And it's like, oh man, it's a really introspective song and kind of makes you look at yourself and examine yourself. But
I like songs like that. I like things that challenge me. It's almost like it's a stop sign.
Yeah.
You're running fast in the wrong direction, and you see a stop sign approaching, and is that a stop sign?
Yeah.
And then you get up there and you come to a stop, and just for that moment, you think, and you're not just mindlessly going in the wrong direction. And the Holy Spirit kind of brings to remembrance a particular passage of Scripture or some moment in your life, some stone, whatever it is, and you either go through the stop sign forward, you turn right, left if it's a four-way, or you pull a U and go back to where you came from. And I think that those moments, are definitely Holy Spirit inspired. I would say the next song on my list, and I don't know why this song hit me so much at the time, but it's "Voice of God" by Dante Bowe. Number one, he's got a powerful voice, but being able to see God in all of the moving parts and the parts that aren't moving. He talks about, hot days and ice cream cones, or the laughter of children, taking the time to enjoy the simple things. And I've never really been good at that. And it challenged me kind of like that. It's just like, I'm really good at just moving forward and plowing through and leaving people behind. I'm getting better at bringing them along, but at the same time, sometimes I miss the simple things because, one, I'm not listening because I'm so focused. And I think focus is good, but I think if the focus, I really think that it's kind of like Jesus in John 17. I just want to do the Father's will. And I think a lot of times we pray to glorify ourselves. a lot of people will pray for healing, but if you're truly praying for healing so you can use the rest of your days to glorify God, I think there's a more likely chance that that healing may come. But I think that when you're praying for healing just so you can spend more time with your family,
or just to make your life easier,
or just praying for whatever it is just so you can have a more enjoyable life, I think that that is at times why the miracle tarries and isn't delivered. That's just my own personal opinion.
Yeah.
But I think that if we would consecrate ourselves, I don't know what other term to use. If you're praying for something, are you praying for it because you want to glorify God with what is going to be delivered, or are you praying for something so you can glorify yourself? And I think that that's why I think a lot of times, because Jesus says, if you ask for anything in my name, it will be given to you. But I think that if you're asking for something in Jesus' name, it has to line up with the will of God.
Wow.
And I think that I forget that sometimes. So that Dante Bowe song hit me at that moment, because I think that sometimes I'm moving so fast that I'm missing the parts of the puzzle that we're supposed to kind of link in to make me see the grander picture. And he'll let you run right past them.
Yeah.
And then you have to come to the realization, instead of you could have come to that realization at 23, now you're 46 and you're thinking, I missed so much. And it kind of causes you to repent. You have remorse, but you can't go back. You can't go back in history and say, I'm sorry to people who are dead, or say thank you to the people that have now passed on for being such an impactful part of your life. So I think Dante Bowe's song "Voice of God" hit me with that.
Justin Peters has a story of a church member that I don't know if he ever knew him. I think it was a story that he heard from this guy's pastor. I'll just call this guy Bill. I can't remember his name, but Bill he used a power wheelchair, and he lived with his brother and sister-in-law. And he was, he could like dress himself and things like that, but he was really, really dependent on them just for help with daily tasks. And they were unbelievers, but Bill was a believer, and he used this power wheelchair, and he prayed for healing, and people prayed that he would be healed. I think he was maybe, I can't remember what. It wasn't Parkinson's, but it was cerebral palsy is what Justin Peters has. But anyway, he every Sunday, and he lived somewhere where in the winter it snowed a pretty good amount. But every single Sunday, his non-believing brother and sister-in-law would help him wake up early and get ready for church, get dressed and cleaned up and all this kind of stuff. And then he would drive his electric scooter, his electric wheelchair, something crazy like 5 miles to church. And the pastor said that he was the most faithful church member he had. He was there. The only time he didn't show up was if the snow was too deep and his wheelchair just literally couldn't, because his brother wouldn't take him, but he'd help him get ready. And but anyway, so Justin Peters was just making the point that this guy glorified God. People, well, he wasn't healed, he must have not had enough faith or something like that, but he glorified God so much more in his disease and his illness by making this huge effort to get to church when sometimes we don't. But anyway, before I'll type it in real quick so I don't forget it. But my number 5 is another artist, 1,000 Foot Krutch.
I've heard of them so many times, but I cannot tell you a song they sing.
So 1,000 Foot Krutch, I don't know if they've made any music in a few years, but I've been listening to 1,000 Foot Krutch since I was a kid. My earliest memory listening to them, I'd have been like 12 years old, I think. And I was just kind of halfway talking the lyrics to one of the songs. And my brother heard me saying it. And he goes, "Where'd you hear that song?" It's like he knew who they were. I probably heard them from him. But I remember in, I think it's 2006, we had a Beachy family reunion up in Delaware. and we drove, and it was such a long trip. And we went to Delaware. I think we even drove up to Maine at one point and saw some family up there. But we kind of made this loop once we got up there and saw a bunch of my dad's family, aunts and uncles and cousins and all that. But I listened to The Flame in All of Us is one of their albums. I listened to that album just on repeat the entire time, just
That's
over
cool.
and over again. And even just seeing the album cover takes me back to the backseat of that car where you know, like on a road trip when you're a kid, you've got like, you basically build yourself this throne in your seat covered by pillows and blankets and stuff like that. Takes me back to that seat in the car. But yeah, I've been listening to them for years, and sometimes I'll go for a year without listening to them, but then I always circle back around to them. And their CD is almost always the CD that's in the player in the car. I don't listen to it very often because I just use my phone for music, but if I ever forget my phone, or sometimes it's like decision paralysis when you've got too many options and you just don't know what to choose. Sometimes I'll just hit the CD button and just let that play. But it's like I was baptized when I was 7, but I don't think I was truly justified. I don't think the Holy Spirit removed the heart of stone and gave me a heart of flesh until I was like 18 or 19 years old. But all throughout those years, 1,000 Foot Krutch was the music that kind of, like we were talking about earlier, with the music that just leads you towards the world, edifies you towards the world. 1,000 Foot Krutch was that music that would bring me back to the ways of God, and it was always comforting. And they're kind of I wouldn't call them metal. It's not metal. It's kind of a hard rock. But they've got some songs that are like really soft, and the singer has got some range. He can go like way, way high pitched. He's got some really slow, soft songs where they just kind of sing. But
it's so funny to think about, you know, kind of like songs that were impactful at such an early age. Mm-hmm. And everybody that sits in a congregation has those songs, and they may not all be theologically correct, but they were, for some reason, God used maybe that song in that moment to edify them toward Him instead of to the world, just to kind of cause that stop sign to happen. And I think that sometimes I forget that when I'm trying to correct people's doctrine. It's just like, He can use anything. You know, He can use anything to change a person's heart, I think. Yeah. And it's just like, I don't know, it's tough sometimes.
So yeah, 1,000 Foot Krutch is again, lots of nostalgic value for me, but huge, just a kind of a constant. It's kind of like one of those friends that you've had for a long time that's with you through all the different stages of life, and that makes you close because they've been with you as you've grown. And so when you think about a moment back in your life, like if you're talking about it with them, they really understand what you're talking about because they were there. You know what I mean? So so that 1,000 Foot Krutch is one of those friends for me. It's like through all these different stages of life, they've been around.
I think the 5th one on my list would be Needtobreathe, Brother. So it hit me at a time when we were starting the men's Bible study on Tuesday mornings. So it's probably like 10, 12 years ago. And I don't know if that song came out then, but it was pretty close. And it was one of those things where I started to kind of apply Proverbs 27:17 as iron sharpens iron, so as one man sharpens another, and our need for each other. And there are going to be times where maybe I'm slipping down a slippery slope and I don't have anything to grab a hold of, but if there's a brother there, they can reach out their hand if you will be humble enough to take it. And I think that it has taught me a little bit of humility in the fact that when I'm struggling or when I see somebody else struggling, being brave enough to interrupt. So being brave enough to interrupt, because sometimes I think that God can give you revelation into a person's life. You know something's wrong, and instead of just going on about your business, taking the time to say, hey, how are you doing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you do a really good job at that with me.
And I think that it's one of those where we need that. And I think as when you use the word church, I think that's what really church should be. Instead of just going through the motions, let's go to church on Sunday morning, let's play all these charades, which I think it is. I'm being honest. I think that for the most part, church is a bunch of charades.
Yeah.
It's not what it's supposed to be, but it's what we in Western culture have turned it into. Let's say something's really sad, super emotionally charged, and let's ask for money at the end so we can continue the charade, continue the circus. Because I really do think it has turned into a dog and pony show. Can we emotionally charge a person through whether it be song or whether it be message or whatever to get them to stick around?
Or just make them feel really good about themselves.
But the whole intent is to get them to stick around.
Yeah.
And I think that it comes down to, why do we want them to stick around? The real point of them sticking around should be to them help you and you help them go further in their kingdom walk, know more about Jesus, and try to live the teachings of Jesus out, try to live the Bible out, instead of, I need you for your influence and for what you can bring to the table to make this machine bigger than it already is. Yeah. And I think that we have lost that I think that I can't say American Christianity as a whole, because there's probably some places where that doesn't happen. But I think it should never be the focus. And Needtobreathe, when they came out with that song, it's just like, sometimes people are locked in a cage that they don't even know they're locked in. They're in a prison cell that they have made the nicest that you can ever imagine. They have made a prison cell the Taj Mahal. Yeah. And they're more comfortable in their prison cell than they are out of it. But as soon as they take that step out of the prison cell, it's like their horizon is expanded. And I think that sometimes we got to be that. It's just like, come on. And I think that Needtobreathe song, Brother, kind of hit me with that.
That reminded me of that Pink Floyd song, Comfortably Numb. You ever heard that?
I don't know if I have.
Oh, man, that's a good song. But it's basically, he says, I've become comfortably numb, where it's just like...
Hotel California.
Yeah, that one's a little more demonic, I think.
But I mean, it's the same, I think.
So honorable mentions, of course, the playlist. Rhymes of the Remnant. It's such a good playlist. I'm so proud of that. I've had nothing to do with making any of the music, but that playlist is one of my greatest creations.
I definitely think that if for some reason you leave this body, I think that should be played as people are coming in.
Absolutely.
It's just like, because they can't criticize you, because you'll be dead.
That's right. But it's man, it's so good. It's I've talked about it before, but basically it's just a playlist of rap music that follows Philippians 4:8. Think about the things of God in it. But that's kind of what I listen to the most now. I just hit shuffle on that playlist every time I get in the car. And
how many songs are on that thing now?
Around 200.
That's a bunch.
Yeah, and there's a lot. Like, there's still artists on there that I haven't gone through. So a lot of times what I'll do when I'm building a playlist is I'll find an artist and I'll go through their entire discography and just listen to everything. And
so it's just on Spotify. Just go to Spotify and find Rhymes of the Remnant.
Yeah, you can search Rhymes of the Remnant.
RHYMES. Rhymes of the Remnant.
Yeah, and I'll put a link. But and a second honorable mention, a song that's on that playlist. You talked about something earlier. Talked about time. There's a song by Timothy Brindle called "The Preciousness of Time," where he talks about time and just kind of talks about how we live our life, how we use our time. You only have so much time. You can't go back. And but he's a really good lyricist too. And he, it's just, you just got to listen to it. It's just a really good song.
I need to, it's just, I have an older vehicle, so I have an 07 Tahoe, and I'm I just like it.
Yeah.
I mean, I could afford to get something else, but I don't see any need in it.
Yeah.
But it still has a CD player in there, so it's just like it's got an aux hole.
Yeah.
But I don't really have the luxury of playing from any type of technology. I play CDs in there, or I listen to the radio.
So can I expand your horizon a little bit?
Yeah,
There's a thing called an FM transmitter. You plug it into the cigarette lighter in your car, and it connects to your phone through Bluetooth, and then it throws out a radio signal. So you set the
89.7 or whatever.
Yeah, so I think mine is 80. I think mine's 89.7 or 87.9, one of the two.
Yeah, Lily has one in her car.
Yeah, it's because I've got no Ford, and it only has a CD player, and I use my phone for Spotify to listen.
I need to do that. The only reason I'm kind of motivated to do that right this second is because I've never taken the time to really go in depth of Rhymes of the Remnant.
You got to, man.
So it's just like that will be the reason I buy one of those RF modulators. Is it a modulator?
Transmitter is what I've heard it called, but it's
whatever.
Sure,
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Do you have any honorable mentions? Any just off the top of your head?
Nope.
No.
Mm-mm.
So music, gift of God. It's a very good thing. I had a discussion with a good friend, Tori Downer, who's now Tori Downer de Santos. She married good friend Pablo. But she doesn't like Christian rap, or at least she didn't when we talked about it a few years ago. And she'd always give me a hard time for it and say I was a sinner and I was sinful for listening to rap music. But we had a discussion one time about it. And I won the argument with this line of logic here. I said, music is a gift from God, just like anything else in the world. And Satan can pervert it and use it for bad and do the opposite of edify us with it, cause us to be distracted. But it is a gift from God. It's a tool that we can use for worship and for our edification. And Christian rap or rap in general has come a long way. Christian rap has come a really long way. And Paul Washer even has a quote. It's at the beginning of one of those songs. I can't remember. Or at the end. It's at the end of one of Shai Linne's songs. A clip of audio of Paul Washer talking. And he says, rap music, which has been used for evil for such a long time, has been taken back by... He was talking about Shai Linne. I think it was at a Shai Linne concert or something. And has been taken back and used to glorify God.
I think track 16 on an Eminem album.
Yeah,
is
Mom Spaghetti.
There's a couple of different artists that are on this song, but it talks about how these rap artists have a responsibility to these kids, and it goes in talking about this in depth. I mean, obviously there's some things that aren't edifying in there, but it's interesting. I wish that the people, let's just say, for instance, and let's say Dr. Dre is a believer in Jesus. I wish you would see more of these people that are so influential, if they are truly a believer in Jesus, use their platform to glorify him. I'm not saying you got to change everything all at once. I'm just saying, just talk about him.
Yeah.
Say something about him. It was kind of like what we talked about. I think it was a couple weeks ago. We were talking about DMX, and it looked like there was this change in DMX before he died. That he started talking about, I'm no longer fighting for Damien and the devil. I'm fighting for the kingdom, and Damien is now fighting against me. So I just, I think that it even alludes to the fact that they write these songs, and then the people who listen to them start believing that that's real life. And they're saying, this ain't real life. This is music. This is lyrics. These are things that we're trying to sell records. And I think that some people, they're so ready to latch on to something that they start thinking that's real life. That's why you see, these kids, whether it be a white kid or a black kid or a Hispanic kid, dressing a particular way, talking a particular way, because they're taking the lyrics of songs and they're trying to apply them to their real life. And that's not real life.
Yeah, they make it their identity.
Yeah, and it's just like, it's so, And I think that we've probably all done that to a degree.
Yeah. It's like, I can't remember who said the first quote. I think it was Eli Lawson. He said, everyone's a theologian. Everyone's got thoughts about God. And then to kind of build on top of that, Shai says, everyone's a preacher, but what's your sermon about? It's like everybody's preaching something. Everybody's saying what they believe about God, either through words or actions or both. So what are you saying? What do you believe?
Well,
thanks for hanging out on the porch with us for a while and pondering the pages.
See you next time.